On June 27th, Gypsy visited Charlie Melton in Topanga Canyon. She brought a guitar to the gathering, which she began playing, and then struck up a conversation with a petite blonde woman. Linda Kasabian, a 20-year-old from New Hampshire, was with her husband Bob and their 15-month-old daughter Tanya. They were living with Melton in his trailer. Melton and Bob Kasabian were friends, and they were planning a trip to South America along with another couple. Linda had already been married twice in her young life. She was the epitome of the seeker, the flower child. She was looking for transcendent experiences, willing to pursue any avenue to find it: sex, drugs, mysticism. But Linda and Bob, who'd been married for 2 years, were having marital woes. They would split up, reconcile, split up, reconcile. Linda confided her troubles to Gypsy that afternoon. Then Gypsy told Linda about Spahn Ranch. I told Linda that we were a group of people that took care of each other and loved each other, and we were all one. Cher confirmed years later. Linda left with Gypsy that day. She brought Tanya with her. Linda was especially happy to see other kids at the ranch. She was initially dismayed to learn that they separated children from parents, but agreed to let Tanya go with Awish and Katie to the back of the property. She accepted the statement that kids were better off not being molded by their own parents to prevent adults from imprinting their egos on them. Linda said, "I was comfortable leaving my daughter because they had other children there." But she missed Tanya. Barbara Hoyt verified Linda's bond with her little girl. I babysat the family children. Linda Kasabian visited her little girl several times a day. She brought her food and treats and toys. She fed her, played with her, loved her. Denny DiCarlo also visited his son a couple times a day, and Mary Bruner also visited her son about once a day. But not once did Sadie visit her baby son, not even once. Linda and Gypsy then went to meet the rest of the family. Charlie wasn't there that day, but Linda found herself surrounded by attention and much affection. That first night, in a shack on the Spahn property, Linda and Tex made love. Tex was gruff and greasy, but he just always had this beautiful smile and those beautiful eyes. I was attracted to him, and he kind of had me that first night. After sex, Linda told Tex about the trip that she, Bob, and Blackbeard Charlie were planning. Tex asked how they could afford that. Linda said that Melton had an inheritance, about $23,000, some of which he'd already given away. Tex told her that money wasn't something any one person could own, that possessions, including cash, were meant to be shared. Money belonged to anyone, everyone. Of course, he was trained to say those things by Manson. Watson was as prostituted as the women were. He was the primary stud at Spahn Ranch and knew what Charlie wanted in a new girl. He didn't come out and ask her to take the money, but Linda understood what he was implying. She wanted to leave her husband, and these people had welcomed her and Tanya with open arms. She felt a debt of loyalty to them. The next day she went back to Melton's trailer with Gypsy and Mary and found it unoccupied. She confiscated $5,000 in cash. She also took some acid tabs she'd brought to California and a buck knife. "I was willing to take the money," Linda confessed. "I didn't do it to hurt my husband, but for acceptance within the family." Returning to Spahn Ranch, Linda then met Manson for the first time. He was wearing his fringed buckskin suit and working on a dune buggy. Ed Saunders wrote, Charlie asked her why she had come to them. Linda told him that her husband didn't want her any longer and that Gypsy said she'd be welcome here. Charlie received the money. He scanned Linda's legs. He felt my legs seemed to think they were okay, as she later testified with a smile. But Charlie knew that Melton and Bob Kasabian would come looking for the money and sent Linda to one of the caves to hide. That night, Linda and Manson got it on, with Gypsy, Brenda, and Awish joining in. The next day, sure enough, Melton and Kasabian came looking for Linda. Charlie told someone to get Gypsy and Linda and went to greet the angry duo. When told that someone stole $5,000 and was on the property, Charlie feigned ignorance. "What's money?" he asked them. "Nothing is yours." Then he defaulted to his standby. He handed his knife to Melton and said, "Go ahead, kill me." When Melton refused to palm the knife, Manson laughed and said, "Then maybe I should kill you to show you that there's no such thing as death." The family bought dune buggies and trucks with the money Linda stole. For a few days, she was feted as the family's new, sweet young thing. For all Charlie's talk of living in the now and discarding establishment desires, he certainly loved people who were famous or even modestly wealthy. Susan Atkins wrote, "Sandra Good has reported to have given Charles Manson over $6,000. Linda Kasabian confessed to stealing $5,000 and giving it to the family. Juanita donated over $10,000 and her van, turning it all over to Charles Manson. And poor Dennis Wilson estimated he spent close to $100,000 on Charles Manson during the several months he provided for the family. And where did this money go? The family didn't pay rent anywhere it lived. The family ate day-old food discarded from supermarkets. The family borrowed and later began to steal cars when it needed them. Except for drugs and later guns, there were no expenses at all for the family." Days after her arrival, Linda was the main star of a group orgy in the saloon. Everyone dropped acid, and Linda found herself dancing with Leslie, and the two women shimmied down to the floor to bring each other to climax. "For me, having sex on LSD was actually a very spiritual feeling," Linda admitted. Prosecutor Bugliosi, in a 2009 documentary, claimed that the subversion of sexuality was one way he broke down ego. Charlie sometimes pressured men to perform oral or anal sex on one another. For them, it was about coercion, getting them to submit to his power. After years in prison, he was comfortable making do with any partner available, but he knew it freaked out these formerly clean-cut kids to go down on another man. He knew if he could get them to do that, he could get them to do anything. For the women, same-sex pairings served a different purpose. Diane wrote that, "Being with another girl also made me more marketable. The more skilled and experienced I was sexually, the more valuable I was as a currency of exchange. For Charlie, sex was always about the pleasing of a man, and because men found two women having sex together to be a sexual thrill, there was value in our ability to perform. And I think that is why Charlie wanted to make sure we knew how to do it properly. In reality, I don't think Charlie wanted us girls to think about each other sexually, except as a way to break down barriers and express his control over us." Linda participated in group sex and took acid with the family. She creepy crawled with the women and listened to Manson talk about the coming race war. There was talk about helter-skelter, she affirmed, if not on a daily basis, on a regular basis. There was an excitement surrounding it. I guess it's like when you know there's an event that's going to happen. Meanwhile, they were being closely watched by Spahn's new business partner. On June 30th, Frank Retz found Charlie and several others lying on the ground in the farmhouse. He ordered them off the property and called the cops. Several times in June, July, and early August, Retz spoke to Spahn about the family in the presence of Squeaky Fromme. Someone recommended that Retz employ Shorty Shea as a watchman. Shorty had been a ranch hand on and off at the property for several years and was always looking for extra work. He spoke to Retz and concurred that Charlie and his group needed to leave. This is likely the first time Manson was given information that led him to believe that Shea had it in for him.